Incompleteness, oh my gosh, incompleteness invites potential discord, or worse yet, the psychological torture of perceived failure. We each are creating our own world through the psychological frameworks we have adopted throughout our journey. Though our independent experiences are unique as a result of these frameworks, there are several things we share that shape our singular mental houses. And much of this has to do with the language we use and how it structures thought. So it makes sense that if we share a common language, we will also attach similar meanings to the words, and thus how they form reality within our minds in a way comparable for us all. I'll have more to say about the limiting nature of language and its after effects in another video in relation to experiencing the fullness of life. But for now, I want to examine two words that are tipping us up big time in our experiences. The very definition of these two words immediately invite discord and struggle, which in reality may not be true. The two words I'm referring to and their associations are flaws and imperfections. And we love to assign these to our perceptions of self as well as others. However, though we place such negativity upon them, we need to understand them at a much deeper level to realize flaws and imperfections simply do not exist, at least not in the way we think of them. Now, you may think I'm crazy, but keep listening as I firmly declare flaws and imperfections do not exist. Those are only perceived where a world is viewed in black and white, good and bad, the contrast of opposites, with one perceived as right and correct and the other as wrong and incorrect. In a world that does not allow for gray areas, flaws and imperfections always fall on the side of wrong and incorrect. However, reality is not so black and white, meaning that these two words really fall outside what should be considered accepted vocabulary. Upon closer inspection, flaws and imperfections are really self-perceived gaps within one's psychological landscape that appear incomplete or out of harmony in relation to other areas of the self. Now, these gaps are what provide for lessons, growth, and ultimate development. We cannot grow unless there is a perceived starting point and a place in which to move. If all areas of the psychological landscape were, quote unquote, finished, no growth or movement would be available. No development of the self would be possible. This is why these gaps, these so-called flaws and imperfections, exist, and why we incarnate into such a messy world. It only appears messed up because of all the psychological gaps where people are, hopefully, moving from ignorance into knowledge. Again, these gaps must exist in order for development to occur. And this makes us feel naturally, or maybe even sometimes unnaturally, uncomfortable. We don't feel safe because we feel that such gaps, are incomplete. They represent incompleteness. They are out of harmony with what we know. Incompleteness, oh my gosh, incompleteness invites potential discord, or worse yet, the psychological torture of perceived failure. That failure of not making the grade, when all is said and done. An analogy of this could be made using the idea of an open wound on the skin. Because as a wound heals, a scab is formed and new skin is weaved in that area that was formerly seen as, flawed or incomplete. However, until that sense of completeness arrives, our vulnerability toward that injury is still heightened. Our skin is tender. It's easy to bruise. For this reason, it is vital that we approach ourselves with self-love and compassion when it comes to our perceived flaws and imperfections. Just as we would be extra careful not to hurt or infect a wound, we must do the same with our psychological selves, as these areas of growth are the same as creating new sheaths of skin. They require delicacy. We can be tough and hard in other areas of our lives, especially those where we have more fully developed, where we have more experience and thus a thicker skin, shall we say. But in these other areas, where we perceive we have flaws or imperfections, such intensity could be more harmful in the long run and damage growth. In other words, stop beating yourself up in areas where you feel vulnerable. You are growing to close a gap in your knowledge. Love and compassion is the only way to do this, to where this development is healthy and not destructive. Why are we doing this? To become a witness to the self. Areas that are undeveloped and unexplored invite us to take a deeper look and examination of who and what we are, to view ourselves in a way that provides a greater experience and realization of our consciousness. If everything within were already complete, would you truly know yourself? Really, it is only through direct engagement that we can truly become aware. Direct engagement needs a stimulus in order to entice the mind to move. Thus, these areas that seem incomplete or out of harmony that we have termed struggle. These unsolved gaps force us to engage ourselves, growing ourselves, and thus becoming more deeply aware of who and what we are, which is a reflection of the life force itself. In this, gaps and areas of incompleteness provide an opportunity to reveal one's spirit to oneself. How often we think we must reveal ourselves to others to justify our validity, yet we are really in need of justifying our validity to ourselves. And it is only through these areas of growth where such recognition can take place. This is why we must learn to embrace them rather than run. Why we must learn to be compassionate and loving within ourselves versus stern and unyielding. We are trying to bring completeness and harmony within ourself in these previously unexplored areas. They are tender and can be painful because we don't have in-your-face obvious answers. We are having to pull them from ourselves in order to bring development and that sense of completeness and awareness to our souls. If this were easy, all of us would be healthy, wealthy, and wise without effort. But no, we can't, because we're much deeper. We're much more multidimensional. We are attempting to approach harmony within all areas of the self, meaning each point is in relation to other points within the self, and we are trying to bring them all into balance. It's not going to be easy. It is meant to reveal the depth of our self to our awareness. Ultimately, there aren't any flaws or imperfection, only areas in which to be a true witness to your spirit through the movement of your growth. They, whoever they are, they say physical incarnation is a school. Well, we must ask, a school about what? Well, the most logical answer is life. And your own life is the gateway, the access point to that information. It is through your own self. But then we got to ask, why do we go to school? And the usual answer is to gain knowledge to prepare us for what's ahead, after we leave school. And so that begs the question then, where are you going after your life in the physical world has ended? And what has all this prepared you for? What's next? Well, nobody really has all the answers there. No doubt there will be more opportunities for development, but let's hope we arrive with the best foundation in which to thrive in that next chapter. Since we're here to learn lessons, there will always be part of us that is in, that learning stage. That means we must learn to be loving and compassionate toward ourselves at all times. We are growing, expanding, moving into new territory as knowledge is presented and we incorporate it into our consciousness. This has to be done with love and compassion. These lessons and the experiences connected to them are fresh, raw, and require delicate cultivation until they can fully mature into wisdom. Just as you would not stamp down on the stem of a newly growing flower, you cannot stamp out the unfoldment of consciousness and expect development to be positive and healthy. When we can learn to love ourselves during the act of development, so too, we can learn to bring compassion to others, as they are also in various stages of growth. Other people like you are spotted with tender, new psychological and spiritual tissue. We do not need to know what areas they are working on, so long as love and compassion are given. It is like water and sunshine over the entire soil of their being. It honors the passage of their life, no matter what stage they are in. My vulnerability is an opportunity to see and experience myself through the act of growth and development, perceived as areas of incompleteness or lack of harmony. I embrace myself lovingly and with compassion during this time of sensitive psychological growth.